this high school enrollment redistricting and the lines and the kids at each school, is that done?
Well, I'd like to talk about that, the very next item.
I think that's the next agenda item.
Okay, yeah.
Anything else on the board goals? Questions, comments? Okay, so moving to the next item, choice numbers for FHS and HHS. We have someone signed up to speak. Do you want to go first? Or?
Why don't I go ahead and just show this? It won't take long enough for the person up to speak. Maybe you can react to that. This chart was just completed today. You'll notice that we have in this current enrollment year, we're down to a 5.5 difference. That has narrowed just a bit from where we started the year. Next year, what we're projecting is that there will be a 6.88% difference. This is a little uncomfortable, but it's not as much as we thought. And when I presented to you back in December, our numbers, I didn't have the IB numbers in it, and the IB numbers almost make the difference. Well, I think they do make the difference. IB students are 55. So it does make a difference. If we didn't have the IB students in those numbers, you'd almost have an identical set for your incoming ninth graders. We didn't see that last year, you noticed. So choice may be doing the balancing that we would otherwise do through boundary adjustment. At least for next year, this is the experiment. We'll see how the fall plays out. Generally, these numbers change somewhat. We don't exactly know what they'll be coming next fall, but this is the projection.
So we've only had eight students that are choosing to go to HSE instead of HSE.
These would be Fishers High School. They would be living in the Fishers High School boundary area, and they would be choosing to go to HSE.
Only 8. Oh, I'm sorry, yeah. So only 8 students are choosing to go to HSE instead of Fishers.
Right. So that would be those are the numbers.
We can go ahead and have our speaker. Just a couple
Yes.
reminders. It's a meeting in the public, not with the public. So, and our typical procedure is to maintain a 3-minute time limit and stick to the agenda item.
Actually, can you put that numbers back up, please?
And
Sure.
he's a veteran. He's
Yeah, I know, but I'm just, for anyone who doesn't know.
All right. Thank you again. My name is Aaron Reeby, and I'm a repeat customer here. Fortunately, the people on the board that are new, I've at least spoken to you a little bit. You may not remember it. Some of you may remember, so I've spoken to you more. I agree with Dr. Borsett that the numbers kind of evened out. However, it's an artificial number because of the change this year in the choice program from being choice with transportation and choice without. The other factors, are all 55 IB students coming from HSE side or not? I don't know that number would be correct. Some may be in the Fishers area already chosen to be IB, or is this just people coming from HSE to Fishers for IB only? Because that's a pretty big number for what the students are. We only end up with about 20 a year that graduate from that program.
Oh, 12.
You need to address that.
12.
That's just a question I have. What are you doing now?
Okay, so Julie Hayes reported that those are truly Fisher or HSE students. This is just my observation. I can't prove this, but last year's freshman choice, we had 232 freshman choice and 32 IB students. This year we have 193 Fishers High School choice and 55 IB students. So did we have more? A question that we got to peel back. Did we have more people try to take the IB route to secure a place at Fishers, because the IB numbers are up, and these are supposed to be only those students from HSE going to Fishers. Now, when you look at it in total, in 18-19, when you look at Fishers High School students and IB students, we had 264 last year. And this year combined, we're at 244. So we're down in combination of those two, only 20 students. It was a little hard to put in that, trying to show the forecast for the total enrollment
older sibling that maybe did IB, and you've heard that at home, you say, oh, well, I'm going to declare IB.
Let me suggest, and let Aaron finish, possibly what he said, some people chose the IB route to make sure that they were guaranteed to transfer with transportation. Again, it all comes back to my main point is the lack of transportation being offered next year for people of choice. I believe the IB students that do have transportation will be taking a bus out to HSE and then transfer back over to Fisher's. So instead of now, they would just be on their Fisher's bus that comes to their neighborhood. I guess the point that I'm trying to emphasize is that while the numbers show that it's close, it's an artificial number because you've taken out anybody who doesn't have the family resources to do a choice without transportation. If you look at the previous numbers, every year your choice difference has gotten larger. I realize the numbers are almost the same last year when you add IB and the choice, but without that limitation, I guarantee you the number would be way higher. It would continue the trend from the last 4 years of the difference being bigger in each class. So what you're doing, if you don't mind my inexactness, you're taking two schools that are this size, your base is this size on HSE and this size on Fisher's. By offering choice, you're letting the community alleviate your problem of changing the line, and they're changing the numbers like this, then you've limited how many people can actually change by not offering them transportation. So to get closer, you're still farther apart than what you desire to do. And what you're doing is you're letting the haves who have that opportunity transfer. Anybody who's a have-not and cannot provide their own transportation was not able to take the choice. So you've artificially limited your numbers to make it look like it's working, but you're doing it at the expense of people who could not afford it. Whereas if you would, it's one line to change, however you do it, with the consulting company's software, it's probably an hour meeting to figure out where your numbers are to get them as close as possible. You could still offer choice for a few people. It would eliminate the dual buses going through most of the neighborhoods, and I understand that's part of the problem is the transportation. Right now, in our neighborhood, we have an HSE bus. I live west of Cumberland Road. An HSE bus comes through about 15 minutes before the Fisher's bus. I believe there's one student that gets on it from our neighborhood. That bus goes through all the neighborhoods west of Cumberland, drives out to HSE, because that's where they're supposed to be going. We also have a Fisher's bus that comes through our neighborhood, and 4 or 5 kids get on it to go to Fisher's. Everybody who's done the choice program has transferred, because we're in that area that lives west of Fisher's, but we're still districted to go to HSE because the line has never changed from I-69 to even out the numbers of living students for each of the high schools. That's all I'm asking, is that we consider doing a redistrict. It shouldn't be nearly the process of anything else. We don't care where they go after high school. If we offer choice, they still have their choice to go in the schools, but you're going to even out the problem of people not being able to go to the school they want to because you've taken away transportation, and that's the only difference this year. You have choice, it's great, but without transportation, not everybody is able to take advantage of it. That's just what I wanted to point out. Hope we can keep this process going on.
Thank you. Any further questions and comments on the high school choice enrollment?
The only other thing is that, the only thing I was thinking of is that as part of your last slide on the previous PowerPoint is even addressing perhaps the boundaries of the high schools. Coming back and let's be talking about that now.
I don't think we're finished talking about it, because we're looking at at what choice is and what it's done. We said that it would be an experiment, and I'm not going to discount the position that was taken here by our speaker. We'll have to factor that into the review and the evaluation of this whole operation. So I can guarantee you we'll be talking about it again.
Soon.
Well, within the year. Because the fall hasn't happened yet.
Well, you're talking within the year, you're talking within the school year.
Probably within the calendar year. Because the fall hasn't happened yet. We don't know those numbers yet. This may or may not materialize as we're projecting. So we'll examine that as the fall happens, and we'll have these conversations again in the fall.
So right now in the fall, are we offering busing or not?
Not to the students who are choosing it. Not to the students who are choosing it.
And so to this gentleman's point, next year there will be no busing to those students who have chosen.
Correct.
So we might come back and revisit it, but there will be a gap year.
Is there a possibility to?
I think that's, I mean,
Or
I'm
was
trying
it
to figure out
like
timing, but I think there's a gap year.
Redistrict.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, it would, I mean, we could do it, we could renege on that. The board accepted my recommendation to try this back in the fall. And so we operated the choice issue for those parents beginning, I think, what was it, in November?
It was the summer when we talked about it.
And I'm talking about
Yeah.
Oh.
the parents who made that decision,
Oh.
given the opportunity in what, November or December?
To allow choice again for this year? Yes, it was November, in November when we made the decision.
Okay.
And then we let the enrollment period go through mid-December, where we actually accepted the applications for choice.
So just so that I'm clear, we might have students that have chosen one school or another that will not have transportation for 6 months? No.
No, this,
School
The
year.
entire school year.
For the school year.
Could Mr. McKinney look at, he's really good with these things, could he look at students who have choice and address the point that there might be a bus full of kids in that neighborhood that are headed to Fishers?
But if they do that,
Everybody else.
then the people who have decided not to have choice as an option for their child because of transportation would ask,
Would say,
well,
well, why didn't you tell me about that?
right.
Yeah, and I feel like this experiment sounds great, but it's affecting a whole bunch of kids' lives. And, you know, who's gonna switch after, you know, they're gonna make that commitment, and then we're telling them, okay, guess what, we're gonna offer you transportation out. So, and then they'll have to do a transfer appeal to get to that school. And what about these 55 IB kids? Do they have transportation?
They would.
Yes. So we're gonna have these 55 IB kids who chose IB, maybe for the IB program, and maybe as a workaround to get transportation. They're gonna be going, and next door is someone who wanted to go to Fishers, didn't want to do IB or didn't qualify for IB, and yet they have to go to HSE because the parents can't offer transportation, but the bus is stopping next door to pick up the IB kid, who could end up dropping out, because when you drop out, you don't have to leave the school.
Do the IB kids get guaranteed bus?
Yes.
it's a shuttle. They go to they're shuttled to the high school and then shuttled back to Fishers, and their day's a little bit shortened at Fishers as a result of it.
If there are enough of them to fill a bus, they wouldn't have to shuttle.
They all go to HSE and then they all go together.
Is it point to revisit this prior to the start of the school year, this coming from 19 to 20, to have another discussion about it?
Well, we could. I mean, anything's possible, but we do have people who have made decisions based on the action that we've taken.
So if we make changes, it would have to be for 20 to 21. So otherwise we're changing the gate in the middle, and it's not fair to families that have already chosen to stay at their home school.
Okay, so on that point, the year prior, so this, like this school year right now, students who have choice that they do have busing right now, could we just extend the transportation 1 year? If we're talking about redistricting high school lines in the following year, I understand that the point was to try to test it to see, but I'm concerned about the students, like Michelle said, that are starting their freshman year at a huge school. That doesn't seem fair to those students to then turn around and offer it the following year. So my suggestion, maybe can we discuss allowing the transportation as it is right now for the following year and discuss redistricting for the high school levels for
Well, the reason it exists the way it does this year is for a purpose that no longer exists next year. The reason it exists now, see, we have never guaranteed transportation for choice students, never. But because we had rebalancing going on in previous years, we were allowing students to get on those buses if there were empty seats on the rebalanced buses. Yeah. Rebalanced students have gone through, and the last of them will leave school this year. So next year we have no rebalancing buses going through those neighborhoods. And therefore, we decided not to continue this process.
So theoretically, next year, the only buses that should be going to the other district, to high school, would be the IB students.
Right.
But the buses don't, they get shuttled, so they actually take a bus. So if you live in HSE district, you take a bus to HSE.
And then the bus from the bus shuttles.
you-
Starting next year, the only busing would be
Is a shuttle
whatever
bus,
they're
transfer bus.
districted for.
Right.
So why couldn't we, if it's 55 students that get shuttled from, I'll say, HSE to Fishers, and why can't we offer the busing or the shuttle buses to those who want? I mean, it may take 2 or 3 more buses, but
And
what's,
And could we identify those students ahead of time to make it more equitable for students who couldn't afford, like if it is truly.
I can tell you that if you can afford to drive, you aren't going to go to one school, get on a bus and be shuttled to the other, you're going to drive.
Right.
But if you can't, this is an equitable solution to say it eliminates those who can and those who can't drive.
Since it's already a shuttle.
I think that it's tough to send the buses through the neighborhoods and pick them up and take them and all that, as I understand it is now. But I would think that we could take them to their high school and shuttle them to the other high school.
If we're doing it already.
Well, let's go back to the original value that the board placed on an equitable is what you're wanting. If that's what you value, equality in size, then we have to find a way to cap choice.
Why is Fisher so much more desirable?
Because the kids at Riverside all want to stay together. And the schools are on the west side, and the kids are on the east side.
And a number of the schools or neighborhoods are actually closer to Fishers too, in proximity than driving over to HSE.
But the kids at Riverside want to stick together, and all but just a few of them, I can only speak to Riverside. 'Cause I
I've heard the same thing from Fishers Junior. So you
Yeah.
have
But
those
the
two
eighth grade
schools both
kids
feeding in and they want to stay
pressure
with their
from the
friends.
small end.
So,
Yeah.
so there's a whole bunch of discussion in the mental health world, and I think there was a letter to the editor written and put in the Current that came out yesterday about the decision the board made that didn't establish a feeder system, how that was probably would cause some other issues that related to mental health. I think the gentleman maybe was a mental health guy. How does dividing these kids up, and if Fishers High School is bigger, maybe it's bigger. I don't know if we're trying to artificially force something that has unintended consequences that we don't really want to deal with, because it would just be easier to have the schools be uneven.
And I do recall somewhat, because I think when I came on the board is when we brought in school choice, took out the lottery system. And it seemed like it was an arbitrary, well, let's pick a number. I mean, the numbers right now are not going to move, if you look at athletics, they're not going to move us out of a class whatever, we're in the top rank. I look at, if you want to look equity or, equalness between the schools, Fishers has IB, HSE has Academy of Finance, and they're not nearly as rigorous. I mean, they're completely different programs. Is there anything, in fact, Project Lead the Way, I think engineering is much stronger at HSE, the smaller school, than Fishers. are we over capacity at either one of the schools? And I don't think we are. So, and I remember, you know, we want to be within, 2% or 3% or whatever, and it's like, well, we're just picking an arbitrary number. And I don't think you can ask any kids at Fisher's or at HSE, we're getting a better experience because we're smaller. You don't notice it, they're both very large schools. So
And I think that's neither good nor bad, but it will change the direction of a lot of programming, and I'm not averse to going that direction. We just need to determine if that's what we want to do.
Maybe that's something we can discuss at the retreat,
Yeah.
discuss the goals.
Well, and I think if we were to build or expand or something to make it so that we don't have a lopsided district. I know the numbers aren't there, we have the seats for the intermediate and the junior high kids, they're just not in the right place. And I would argue, well, for the mental health and the stability of our community, let's just correct it, and we might have some extra seats somewhere. I know it's probably not fiscally that responsible to do something like that, but the only way we're gonna correct this is to have a true feeder system, because I cannot ask a 13, 14-year-old to make a decision, to leave their friends based on they can't get to the school where they want to go.
Now, creating equity, needs to be something about a lopsided school system.
Well,
Now, if we're going to try to correct that, we will not necessarily do that through a true feeder system.
But for district high school.
yeah, we're changing the high school line.
Yeah, I mean, those are valid questions, and it's a good conversation, we're not going to be able to get away from it.
I do feel for this group of kids who are at the experiment. Because, next year if this changes, then what do? Do I go back with my friends who I left and I've made some new friends, but I really, they're who I like, the ones I've had for longer. And we're setting these kids up for these horrible decisions. And, yeah.
Well, it sounds like this is something we can revisit
Yes.
soon.
Yeah.
So we'll take a further look, both with board input and administrative expertise on that topic.